Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 226 of Be With Me, 7 Minutes of Biblical Wonder. Now, here's the deal. We're going to read a story today from John chapter 9, and this is on the heels of Jesus just being attempted to be stoned. And then we'll find out if he can say things that are even more offensive than that. So Jesus is just leaving the temple in John chapter 8, where it says they picked up stones to throw at him, and Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. And the story is about a man born blind. And then here's my title of today: as a blind man blindsided by sight. And let's be careful here. So we're going to read the story. It takes up all of chapter 9. It's an amazingly long story, and most of it, Jesus isn't even in it. It's discussion about Jesus, which is fun. So we'll be watching for place and the people in these various little sections, and then we're watching for an external drama, because it's all about a guy blind, and then this internal drama. And we'll watch for what people think they know, but they don't. And we're going to ask ourselves, Lord, what might be in this passage for us? Give us light and eyes, and let us not be blind. I don't want us to have heard this before, and I know this story. I know how this podcast works. So no, you don't, because I don't even know how today's going to work. And let's read the Bible on our knees, as George Whitefield would. So here we go. As he passed by, he saw a blind man from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, It was not this man who sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, Go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. So that's section 1. Section 2 here is the neighbors. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, Is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, It is he. Others said, No, he is like him. But he kept saying, I am the man. So they said to him, Then how were your eyes opened? He answered, The man, called Jesus, made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to Siloam and wash. And so I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. And then the third section has to do with the Pharisees. So they changed location here. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was the Sabbath day, that's an important part of the story, when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight, and he said to them, He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God. Jesus is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was division among them, that is the Pharisees. Verse 17 of John chapter 9. So they said again to the blind man, What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight. So this is the fourth section. They put the man aside and interview his parents away from him, and here's the interview with his parents. They asked him, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, We know that this is our son, and he was born blind. But how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself. And then in parentheses, his parents said these things because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Close parentheses. Therefore, his parents said, he's of age, ask him. Okay, so then now it's the fifth section here. And they call the blind man back. For a second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner, referring to Jesus. Verse 25, he answered, whether he's a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, though, I was blind and now I see. They said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? And they reviled him, saying, you are his disciples, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. The man answered, so this is the blind man talking again, why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. This is the blind man still talking. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, you were born in utter sin, and would you teach us? And they cast him out. And then here, the final section, section 6. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered, and who is he, sir, that I might believe in him? Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you. He said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. Jesus said, for judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, are we also blind? Jesus said to him, if you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains. So, ladies and gentlemen, the story of the blind man, specifically the blind man blindsided by sight. We will talk more about this tomorrow, but for today, let's let the story sink in. I love you, my brothers and sisters.